You know, there comes a time in everyone's life where they will have to admit defeat. For me, that time is now. I admit, I've lost. I've lost my patience. And now I welcome you to get annoyed alongside me as we take a look at how not to make a good content restoration mod. It takes a lot to get a rise out of me, but this'll do it.
Last time I did something similar was about 2 years ago. People often thought that I hated the mod author, which isn't the case. Frankly, I'm possibly one of the only Bethesda fans that knows how modding works and how to actually create mods, but doesn't care for or actually like mods.
Yes, I am a vanilla bitch.
Restoration mods like this are actually one of the reasons why. Oh, but even as annoyed as I am, do me a solid and don't go harassing anyone involved with the making of the mod, alright? I'll never condone or understand that practice. Instead, let me look like the asshole in your place. Sounds fair, right? Okay, so the disgrace we're looking at today goes by the name of Simply Uncut New Vegas. It was originally uploaded to Nexus Mods on the 9th of December 2019 by Count. I might have talked to them in the past because the name rings a bell, but I'm not sure. Oh, also, this mod seems to have been made by many different contributors, dubbed as the Court of Kvatch, with the Count acting as the frontman of the operation, I suppose.
Anything else? Oh!
When you download the main file of 17 files included, it states that this is finale part 1 of 4, also mentioning that part 2 will come out late 2021, early 2022. Okay, so that deadline was never met. So what happened? Well, we can find this pinned post in the post section, which basically states that the mod is finished except for one possible final update. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a good thing.
So, are we ready to actually look at what it does yet?
Not quite yet. First, I will speedily show you how this mod is already a pain before you even install it. With a name like Simply Uncut, you'd expect it to be simple, right?
Well, let me ask you this. Does something simple usually need 7 different content grades?
Where was I? So for this simple restoration mod, you need all the DLCs, which, okay, I can understand that, I guess. But you also need NVAC, New Vegas Anti-Crash, which is just one of those mods that's been dead in the water for years and its post section is filled with desperate people looking for answers. But before you can download this mod, you also need to download New Vegas Script Extender. So much for the simple part. So after having set that up and getting the anti-crash up and running, there's one more mod that's needed to get Simply Uncut running, and that's this little oddity called Vault 87 Uncle Leo. So basically this mod is just a mesh replacer for an NPC added by Simply Uncut. Now you may think, but if that mod is specifically made for Uncut, why does Uncut have it as a requirement? Good question. Here's your answer.
Just because.
If you think that's some kind of joke, nope. The mod author literally just said, I just decided to make this mod a requirement.
What the fuck?
So after all that, we can finally look at what this mod restores to the game. By reading. This is, unironically, my favorite part of mods. Reading the changelogs. Oftentimes they're quite interesting and provide a lot of insight. This one though?
Not quite.
Many things are left to die, but now they have been given a second chance. Prepare for Simply Uncut New Vegas.
Okay, besides that whole part sounding a bit off and terrible, I'll bite. What do you got?
Fallout New Vegas is arguably the best Fallout game to exist post Bethesda acquisition.
Yeah, sounds good so far.
But like all games and gaming companies, looking at you Obsidian, things are, most of the time intentionally, left out. See, now this is where my problem really starts. As the resident cut content connoisseur, I'll tell you right now that when a developer intentionally leaves something out of their game, they don't want it in there. And when they don't want that, it's usually better off left unused. For example, Radiant quests were cut from Oblivion, and that was probably for the better. Fallout New Vegas cut parts of the quest return to sender in order to make it less of a hassle for players. These are deliberate cuts, and they are for the better. Oftentimes though, the cuts are far from deliberate. However, I do know that NPCs were disabled in order to save up memory for the consoles, and that the Torn Mayhem quest was cut because it couldn't get polished up enough in time. Those are also deliberate cuts, but they usually aren't something that you just pop back in. The choice of words doesn't make sense anyway, since I know for sure that this mod doesn't attempt to restore any of the things the developers intentionally left out.
Okay, but that's enough rambling about word usage. It'll get better when we move on. Right? It'll get better, right?
NPCs, items, quests, and for example, even concepts. Oh yeah, remember all those concepts that were removed from New Vegas? Could we please be any more nondescript? The NPCs who could have brought more life to the game are back, and items that never made the cut or were left over from the legacy of Fallout 3 are back. NPCs given the axe, or just forgotten before release, are given a second chance.
Just forgotten before release? What does that even mean?
Those weapons and armor that was thought to be unworthy of being in the world space are given redemption through the gag. Okay, I shouldn't be hating on someone whose first language might not even be English, but... oh, come on! Quests that were either too dark or didn't make sense have been brought to the light of day. Okay, now I'm pissed again. First off, have you played New Vegas? Would they really remove a quest for being too dark? Secondly, why would you bring something back that doesn't make sense? If you can admit that its inclusion no longer makes sense, then it no longer belongs in the game. Case closed. Areas that were never published due to confusing and sometimes stupid reasons have been opened for all to explore.
What the fuck did I just read?
We also have this gem present in the description stating, but this mod has become something more than restoring cut content. This mod has become something else entirely. Immersive add-ons such as albino eyes for albino characters. Snipers now use sniper rifles instead of hunting rifles or cowboy repeaters. Dead Securitrons in Hidden Valley, and more. This mod not only seeks to restore cut content, but to add more immersion to this vast game. Yeah, okay, that's nice and all, but isn't this mod called simply Uncut? Shouldn't this be a simple to use mod that restores cut content in an easy to understand manner? Well, clearly not, as now we're at the cut content grades. The following are the grades of cut content listed below. Each cut NPC, location, quest, perk, challenge and item will have a grade. Use these grades to determine the authenticity of the cut content. I'm gonna be dead serious here. If you see a mod that claims to restore cut content and it has something like this, just leave the page straight away. But how about that grading, huh?
We're gonna need the big guns for this.
So the first rank, and only good one, is Unoriginal Obsidian. Content left behind by Obsidian that was fully complete and was simply placed in the game world by us with no major additions. Fully complete with no major additions, huh? We'll see about that. Next is Identity Crisis. Content left behind by Obsidian in the form of bits and pieces and has major additions from us. So that's basically adding scotch tape to a broken branch and calling it whole again. Got it. Then, Speculation. Content mentioned in the files and had no physical form, example or raw version. Completely redone by us using the information we could find in the files and online. One of the words I definitely want to see on anything trustworthy is the word speculation.
You know me, I love speculation.
But this basically boils down to Identity Crisis again. So I'm gonna be combining those two categories into one under the name Patchwork. Pseudo. A recreation from something that was cut and was not able to be restored properly. So this is basically just speculation. Again. That now brings us to 3 grades under the Patchwork banner. Björn.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Legacy. Fallout 3 assets left behind in the files. Yeah. Legacy stuff. They're just leftovers and not relevant. Just let them be unused. And then finally, Mud. Fallout 3 assets left behind in the files that we confirmed were intended for use in Fallout New Vegas, but were ultimately cut from the game for one reason or another. Yeah, that's so vague it can basically fit under any of the previous categories.
And with that, me and my heightened blood pressure at least made it to the actual content side of things.
We start off with the quote-unquote re-added NPCs. Taking inventory of a mod's contents has never been easier than with this list, but that doesn't make it any better. We start off with Billy Bettis, simply referred to as a food caravaneer traveling between most major settlements. He's classified as Identity Crisis. Great example to start off the list, by the way. And yeah, I can see it. This mod alters Billy's level, factions, inventory, and creates a new AI package for him, as well as giving him completely new dialogue with a completely new voice actor.
Billy Betts' Caravan of Relief. You hungry? I got what you need. Thirsty? I got that too. That there's my buddy Pablo. He's pretty cool, but watch out. He has a laser rifle, and he's not afraid to use it. Me? Well, I'm Billy Bettis. I'm a caravaner from the Crimson Caravan. I specialize, however, in peddling food. A lot of people hungry on the roads and in the towns, especially on this frontier, so I feed who I can. For a price.
Now, I mean no disrespect, but even I could probably do better both in acting quality as in mic quality, and I don't even sound remotely American.
Yepers, good work for good pay if I do say so myself.
Yepers! Good work for good pay if I do say so myself.
Yeehaw!
Yeehaw!
And before you say, oh, but Billy has an alternate voice present in the optional files section.
I know, but I've downloaded enough pointless stuff for one setting. If it isn't in the main file, it doesn't exist for me.
The original Billy Bettis doesn't really have much known about him, but he wasn't supposed to travel in the way he does now. That's certain. Oh, and of course, he didn't have any lines of dialogue left over. The next NPC is Pablo Miller, a Crimson Caravan guard, following Billy. He's graded as an original Obsidian, but let me offer you an alternate alliteration. Yet there's actually nothing in the files that indicates Pablo would be a Crimson Caravan guard or even directly associated with Billy. I know this assumption often gets made, but that's because the two men have a very similar form ID, so they were likely made at the same time. But the same is true for Clement Bob and Frank Weathers, and they aren't related in any way. The only unaltered things about Pablo are his inventory, his class, and the fact that he has no unique dialogue. NCRCF Prison Guards. Graded Identity Crisis. Nope, these are completely made up, as is their unique armor. A bunch of disabled and unused vanilla NPCs. Their description reads, do I have to explain it? Shame on you, Obsidian.
Yeah, why would we need to explain what we put in the mod, right? That's ridiculous!
The location of these NPCs is marked as the Strips, Quests, Helios 1, the list goes on. Oh, I bet. Ranger Chauncey, a super mutant ranger in the NCR present at Ranger Station Foxtrot. He has his own unique comically small ranger hat, or at least he would, if the latest version of the mod hadn't broken the mesh, resulting in this monstrosity. The hat is, of course, based on a comment about Chauncey made by developer Joshua Sawyer. His placement makes sense, but because he has no unique or even generic dialogue, he will still feel pretty out of place. Private Biggs and Harcourt. These are two female NCR troopers that were meant to appear at Ranger Station Foxtrot as well. Or at least, that's what we can presume based on the editor IDs of their leftover dialogue. Yeah, these women only exist in the form of player-only lines, so anything besides that has been completely made for the mod. Some of these lines are repurposed, so that's kinda cool, but everything else is just complete speculation, which is also what these gals are graded as. Oh, and let us not forget, we also have some more new voice-acted dialogue.
You know, there are people with bad days, and then there are people who are downright jinxes. What am I talking about? Take a look over there. See the girl with black hair? That is Private Harcourt. Outright jinx. She is nothing but bad luck. I can even give you a good example. I had basic with her. During the final live fire obstacle course, she got shot 5 times. 5! How on God's fucked up earth is that even possible? It's baffling, I swear on my heart. She is not just a danger to herself, but to us all.
What? Why? Why are you asking? Did that bitch say something? I'm sorry. Biggs complains a lot. Calls me a jinx. I thought she told you that too.
Now this isn't quite Billy Bettis, but it isn't good either.
My biggest problem with these women is that they don't sound like a natural born American. They don't even sound like a native English speaker. Of course, I don't have any problem with that. I know how hard it is to make that switch. Ik wil gewoon benadrukken dat als je gaat proberen om te klinken als een Amerikaan, wat de bedoeling is voor dit soort mods, dan gaat je niet zomaar kunnen zeggen van oké, ja, dit is mijn duidelijk Europees accent. Ik klink ook zo. Ik klink als iets tussenin. Maar ik ga niet zeggen dat ik een Amerikaan ben. En ja, ik weet dat die switch gewoon moeilijk is om te maken. Moving on.
Angel, a super mutant member of the Omertas, present in Gamora. They're marked as an original Obsidian, but their AI packages and factions have been altered, so take that for what it's worth. They also don't receive any new dialogue, so there will now be an unexplained super mutant in the casino, which may be jarring if you don't expect it. Lake Lurk Alpha Males, a generic class of Lake Lurks. These are actually as advertised. They're completely unaltered and just placed at a couple of spots in the game. Besides the fact that these locations might not have been the intended ones, this is fine. It gets a pass from me. Sunset Sarsaparilla Eyebot. This one is kinda self-explanatory. I don't quite get why it's graded as an identity crisis though. Only its AI packages have been altered. Irradiated red roaches. These were meant to appear in the removed Cottonwood Cove bunker. With the mod, they do appear there, but they also appear when the barrels are dropped into the normal camp, which is not based on any evidence. Sergeant Warren Jacobs, graded as an original, but his factions, stats and AI packages have been altered. For some reason, the one thing I would expect to change, his inventory, remains untouched. He's also placed at Camp McCarran for some reason, despite there being no evidence of where he was meant to appear at all. Trooper Willis, an NCR trooper placed at Camp McCarran. He's tied to the unfinished quest Jailhouse Rock, similar to another restored NPC, MP Les Fretwell. Unlike Les though, it's unknown where Willis was meant to appear. Also, since both NPCs never really got developed, I don't even know for sure if they were meant to use the names Trooper Willis or MP Fretwell, since these don't really match with the final game's naming convention. Their roles, as well as the quest they're now tied to, are all purely fabricated by the mod. Meg Reynolds is the mayor of a settlement removed from the final game called Underpass. There were also some residents for this settlement cut, as well as a quest, but nothing substantial. The mod brings this all back, but of course, all the dialogue and voice acting is new.
Morning. Well, howdy.
This is Underpass. We're a small community, recently formed, and so far we've been doing good for ourselves. Our crops are doing well, so far. Not everything is going well, however, but that's besides the point. We're doing well for ourselves, and that's all that matters.
It's not bad. Not bad at all. I think it's probably the best we've heard so far. The problem is, we don't all of a sudden have good writing.
I certainly wouldn't mind living under the banner of the bull. Oh, good Lord in heaven!
Bye.
Hey!
Dead vertebrate pilot. Yeah, that's a restored corpse, alright. Only problem being that his role was already taken by a skeleton, making him effectively pointless. Ranger Gomez, a female ranger meant to be present at the monorail at Camp McCarran. This is, once again, just a simple restoration like the mod is advertised as. Lucky 38 Protectron. Classified as an original Obsidian, this guy is everything but. In the vanilla game, this guy is just called Protectron, and has a script attached that clearly states that he's meant to be turned off. So of course this mod changes his name and makes him patrol around the Lucky 38 lobby. His script is no longer present either. Then there are some NPCs that were only mentioned in notes in the vanilla game, yet the mod made NPCs based on these mentions. Falling under this category we have Ranger Beaumont, Mayor Jared, Mayor Chapman, and Sergeant De Leon. Then there's also Rose, Sylvia and Mayor Stain. These are unused NPCs in the vanilla game that now just glitter Nipton as corpses. The mayor's inclusion doesn't make sense though, as he was burned alive. Also, despite the mod claiming original Obsidian, it alters Rose and Sylvia to give them sexy sleepwear. Cannibal Johnson's Coyote. Again, pretty self-explanatory. And it actually would be an original Obsidian if you didn't explicitly state you changed its name. Guess it's time for a bit of a lightning round. Combat iBot, made up. A bunch of unused guard dogs, yeah, those are mostly okay, but pointless inclusions overall. McCarran Tower sentries, don't know why these aren't just included with the other bunch of generic NPCs mentioned previously. NCRCF hostage, yeah, again, just completely made up, just based on some script mentions and the key. McCarran sentry bot, that one's fine, no problem with me. That brings the score to about a nice 3 out of 50 faithful restorations. Private Hastings and Private Nelson, just based on internal names of existing NPCs, completely made up and add nothing. Same goes for Ruby, which is a completely made up character just based on an early name for Trudy. Felicia, also completely made up, she's only ever mentioned in the internal name of an unused container in the vanilla game and a small script, but now she's a full-fledged person with a full-fledged quest and of course full-fledged voice acted dialogue.
Hey there, partner. How are you doing today? That's good to hear. It's hard to have good days, you know? Oh shit, where's my manners? My name's Felicia. Pleasure to meet you. Sorry to sneak up on you, friend, but I couldn't help but notice those star caps you were carrying. They kind of shine in the sun, you know?
I think it's also safe to say at this point that the biggest problem with this mod's voice acting is just the complete lack of any consistency. This NPC is voiced quite fine, but the quality of the recording equipment just isn't there. Oh, but don't worry, everyone's favorite part of the hit game Ride to Hell Retribution also appears here. Questionably written flirty dialogue.
Oh, you're quite the talker, ain't you, Mr. Smooth? Well, alright, fine. I can't say no to those gorgeous eyes anyhow. You do have gorgeous eyes, though. Has anyone told you that?
Hits me right in my heart. In the same way a bad McDonald's CBT burger does after a long day of walking with heat stroke. A pre-kidnapped version of Ranger Stella that has nothing to do with good content, but I do have to admit it's a nice touch. However, I can become too subjective as this appearance really isn't based on any unused content. Thunderfoot, Ivory, Cruz and Wierzbowski. These are all based on the design documents from Interplay's Fallout 3, which is more well known by its project name Van Buren. Knowing that, it shouldn't surprise you that everything about these guys is completely made up. Well, that's not entirely true. Their voice acting is not made up, because you couldn't make this shit up.
I am Wierzbowski, Primus in the Legion. I serve Kaiser's will here at Camp Malpais.
I am Cruz, Cabsarier of Camp Malpais.
Camp Malpais.
Under the direct command of Centurion Christoph, I am obligated to hand out healing powder. I originated in a tribe from Denver. The Hangdogs we were called.
Hold there, profligate. No one but the Legion may enter the bunker. Besides it being a military outpost for Kaiser?
Hawkins. Billed as a fully functional powder ganger companion, this is purely based on a script mentioning he was supposed to follow you temporarily during a removed quest or quest portion at Quarry Junction. Why was he made? Well, if this note is to be believed, then he was simply created because there were no evil-oriented companions in the game. Well, sure, I've had the same sentiment before, but this is a good content restoration mod and there's no place for subjective stuff if you want to make it faithful. Paladin Aster. A Brotherhood of Steel paladin placed in the southwest sewers that also got restored by this mod. His entire existence is only confirmed by a single unused note in the vanilla game. He also has a noticeably non-American accent as well.
God protect me. Someone is approaching.
Jesus, halt! Stop! Don't come any closer or I'll vaporize you. Who are you? What do you want from me? I asked first. Answer me. Well, this is a dangerous fucking area to just be passing through. It's a war zone down here. What made you think coming down here was a good idea? Mutants and feeds everywhere? Fuck it. Forget it. Forget I asked. I really don't care. Just keep your distance if you know what's good for you.
And then finally there's Uncle Leo. I suppose we all know him, right? And we also know that he doesn't belong in this game, right? I'm sorry, Uncle, but go back to your own game.
Was that it? Can I delete this hell off my PC now? What? There was just one list. There were like 10 more?
Luckily, all other categories have a way smaller list to look through. For example, the items. Out of the 37 items added, 14 are just taken from Fallout 3 and are thus irrelevant. 3 are also notes, 2 of which are unaltered, while 1 basically had its contents made up from scratch. 2 are just icons as well, so bye. Stun grenades are just that, the basic fatigue dealing grenade that goes unused in the vanilla game. Irradiated red roach meat can be found on the irradiated red roaches that were put back into the game. Also a faithful restoration, even though they're just a default part of the roach's inventory. The hostage cell key for the NCRCF is related to that newly made hostage. And there are also a handful of completely made from scratch weapons.
Come on, man! This mod is giving me nothing to work with right now. Give me something that'll evoke a reaction.
So, this is the mod's interpretation of the unused, unique Papa Khan armor, probably one of the more widely known pieces of unused content. Because the model lacks textures, mods that restore it usually cobble up whatever the fuck they want apparently. I would say this looks terrible, so I will. But basically every version of this armor I've seen looks like a huge piece of garbage. I don't really know why either, because it literally has a unique Pip-Boy icon that accurately depicts how it would have looked. Speaking of looking like garbage, the new Powder Ganger Balaclava based on icons and remaining textures. It simply doesn't look good, nor fitting. Guess the last worthwhile item to mention here is the Armored Vault 21 jumpsuit. Also one of the more widely known pieces of removed content. It has often been talked about by the developers, but no one seems to know where it was meant to appear. Of course, the mod takes the easy way out and explicitly states they didn't know where to put it, so they just put it in Doc Mitchell's house, despite still grading it as an original Obsidian. Alright, moving on from items, we have one perk present here, which is Child at Heart. Since the perk actually unlocks some dialogue, I guess it's not completely pointless. I can understand people wanting it for role-playing purposes, despite it not really bringing much to the table. The patch log only refers to one quest, Catfight, being added with the default version, which isn't even true, but okay. Catfight is the made-up name for the quest between the 2 female NCR troopers mentioned previously at Ranger Station Foxtrot. The name Catfight also fits in perfectly alongside basically every other quest that's named after an era-appropriate song.
Except it doesn't.
The locations. Underpass isn't an original Obsidian since you altered it. Same goes for the Gomorrah 3rd floor, Cell Block C in the NCRCF, the North and Southwest sewers, and the Foxtrot bunker. I also want to point out that the Gomorrah 3rd floor was explicitly cut because it made the casino too big and difficult to navigate. Yet these bozos thought, screw it, add it in. Benny's escape tunnel also isn't a double O, since you explicitly state that you put more clutter inside. And then there's once again a handful of locations made from scratch, i.e. not restorations. The 2 most offending ones are Vault 74 and Vault 24. Vault 24 only exists in the form of its associated jumpsuit, but there's nothing else known about it. This means that everything you see in the mod is completely made up from scratch. Vault 74 did exist beforehand, or at least in a way. It was a location made by Bethesda to showcase gag modding. This mod takes the fact that Vault 74 is a concept and basically invents everything else. There are also 4 challenges added by this mod, which are all just faithfully re-added.
It took long enough for me to be able to say that.
And then there were only 3 more lists. One calls itself Features Re-added, which is once again not really the correct terminology to use here. For example, one such feature states, Canyon Runner now wields a 9mm pistol, as implied by his collector's edition playing card.
While that is a cool little detail, calling it a feature makes as much sense as saying I'm not a nitpicking asshole.
There's also a line that simply states, tons of unused dialogue. Very specific. However, they can't all be comedy gold. And the things listed here aren't even funny when broken down, so I'd rather just move on. The second list consists of 5 re-added schematics. I don't know why these weren't just included with the other items. 3 of the 5 are just leftovers from Fallout 3, 1 is basically worthless, and the last one is a fixer-upper that's actually unique to Fallout New Vegas. Grand. And the final list tells us what we've been looking at all along. Things added that are not good content. However, in a final attempt on my life, this list isn't actually that. A more accurate title would have been things added that we didn't bother justifying as good content, because a lot of things here are either directly tied to previous lists or way less egregious than previous mentions. It's also kinda hard to talk about this list since it contains more stuff from the optional files, which I didn't really want to talk about. But it's really hard to leave out a gem like this. Lone Wolf Radio was originally listed as good content, but people were negative about it, so I put it here instead. I personally believe in the Lone Wolf story, so whatever.
Well, I personally believe the Lone Wolf story, so... Dear Sir or Madam. What? This is a good content restoration mod. How many times do I have to repeat that? This isn't something subjective. Why is that so difficult?
Then there's a nod to Fallout Midhunters and to the mod creator's deceased pet. Come on. This isn't an Easter egg mod.
And we've done it. We've gone through the entire list without losing our sanity. Mostly. Of course, there are some things added by the mod that aren't present in this list, but I think I've wasted enough of our time already, right?
Would I recommend this mod? Fuck no. If you want a mod that actually restores content in a correct manner, there are plenty more out there. The only thing I would see people download this for is to experience the voice acting, which really does range from passable mod to original Resident Evil. You will never know what to expect, that I'm sure of. But let's say we're in a universe where I'm not a complete asshole. How would one fix this mod? Well, since deleting it isn't really an option, I'd say just try advertising it differently. There's a mod for the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, which basically does the exact same thing, that's called Oblivion Uncut. It also got some backlash because it didn't clearly mention that it wasn't a pure good content restoration mod. So, what happened? Well, the first thing you'll see in the description now reads as follows. Oblivion Nouveau Uncut is a moderately sized, game-wide expansion mod that introduces many brand new quests, NPCs and locations, as well as re-implementing lots of previously unused content like characters, dialogue and items. The new content is partly inspired by various elements and leftovers of deleted content or theories about them, like Neresteral or the Red and Black Queen, which I've given quests to in this mod. I've also recreated deleted NPCs and imagined what they may have looked like, or where they may have lived. Essentially, I've made a whole load of new stuff inspired by scrapped ideas, as well as restored a load of Bethesda-made good content too. The mod contains probably 50% newly restored content and 50% brand new content. I've also tweaked and improved many things that were done poorly or broken in the original game, like AI packages or dialogue conditions, and also improved other aspects of the vanilla game. I know what I've done with my mod isn't for everybody. Lord knows people have made their feelings clear enough times, but nobody is forcing you to use a mod if it offends you. And I think that's the best course of action here. Just bite the bullet and say you were wrong in your first advertising tactic, that way people will not get as mad, and at the end of the day you'll have a better conscience because you haven't lied to thousands of people.
And that was simply Uncut, a mod that simply lies to your face. If there's any positive takeaway from this, it is that making this video finally made me purchase all of the Fallout New Vegas DLC. So that's something. However, I hope that you did learn something today, and if you think that this mod is worth making 2 clickbait videos on, you should rethink some things in your life. Have a nice day.